All right, let's make ourselves some menus. So I have open here the version of Pong that I made in an earlier video. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to add a basic start menu to this game. So first things first, let's look at what we've got. So this is my basic room. When I hit play, it launches immediately into playing Pong, which is really kind of freaking hard to get a handle on. And so you often miss that first ball, which isn't real fair. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a menu. So our first thing that we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of grouping and kind of cleanup. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate the room that I've made so far. And I'm going to make a new thing that I'm going to call room menu. And then I'm going to rename my other room. So I'm going to rename this, and I'm going to rename this room game. And then I need to switch this hierarchy because when I start this, it's going to start in the menu. So first things first, let's open the menu. I'm going to delete everything that's in here. So I have my instances of my two paddles. I have that ball, and I have that game object. When I run this, it should show up in this room, but it just skips it. It doesn't actually skip it. It's actually that it's set to start in the game room. So here I'm going to hit this little button, which lets me reorder things. And I'm just going to drag menu to the top. And now that's got that home icon. And then we're going to go ahead and close this. Now when I hit run, I'm going to get that blank menu screen to start with. Great. So I got my blank menu screen. I'm going to go and do a little bit of cleanup before I start building more on this. So I'm going to hit create group in here. And that's going to be a group that I'm going to call game objects. So that's just a folder. And then I'm going to take all three of my game objects here and slide them into the game objects folder. And then I'm going to right click here and I'm going to hit create group. And this group is going to have menu objects. And then I'm going to do that exact same thing for my sprites. So I'm going to create a group in here that I'm going to call game sprites. And I'm going to drag these two guys. I'm hitting shift, by the way, to select both of those things in there. And now, careful, if you hit create group on this thing, it'll create a folder inside of there. I want to create it in the sprites. So I'm going to hit create group here. Then we're going to make this thing that we're going to call menu sprites. This is just to save me a headache later. I really encourage you to be as organized as possible. If you just have assets dumped into a folder, it's going to be hard to find things when you start getting to complicated games. So in my menu sprites folder, I'm going to go ahead and create a couple of sprites. So I'm going to create a sprite in there, and this is going to be SPR underscore button. And then I'm going to go ahead and edit that sprite. So I'm going to, over here, whoops, I forgot to resize it before I edit it. Okay, so I'm going to hit resize. I'm going to tell it I don't want it to maintain its aspect ratio, and I'm going to make it 128 by 64. I think that's going to work well with this size that I have. Let me show you why I think that. I'm going to hit edit image here. I'm going to just grab a medium-sized brush and a rectangle outline, and then I'm going to outline my entire rectangle with that guy. So we can zoom out and see what that looks like. That looks like just the outline, nothing in the middle, and that's what I'm gonna start with. So that's my sprite for my button made. Now I'm gonna go make some objects out of that. So I'm going to close that because I don't need to deal with it right now. I am going to set it to deal with middle center. That's going to let me position the button by the middle and center, which is going to make my life a little easier. I'm going to go into my room. Oops, no, I'm not. Sorry. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to create some objects. So my first object I'm going to need is going to be called obj button parent. And I'm calling it obj button parent because it's going to be the parent of the three other buttons that I'm going to create. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a variable for it that I'm going to call button text. And that's going to be a string with nothing in it to start with. I'm going to add a couple of events for this. The first event I'm going to add is going to be mouse and left pressed. We'll just leave that one alone. We don't need to do anything with that right yet. And then the other button the other event that I'm going to have is going to be a draw event. And in that draw event, I'm going to need to draw some text. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a draw self in here. If you have a draw without a draw self, the sprite for the thing just won't appear at all, which is obnoxious. And then I'm going to hit draw value, and then the value that I'm going to draw is just going to be the button text variable, and I'm going to set that to draw at the center of the button. I'm going to need to do a little bit of text alignment here, and I'm probably going to need a font. So I'm going to go make a font real quick. So I'm going to do create a font in the fonts folder, and I'm going to call this font underscore menu. And then let me look at my notes here quick. Okay, so in my notes, I dug through a whole bunch of fonts for a fair second, and I found that I liked the Kristen ITC font in a size of 20. I found that this one is better looking with anti-aliasing on. You may find otherwise. So feel free to play with this a little bit. Like, go through and find some fonts. I tried a few. Be aware that some of them position a little strangely. So I found this one to be a good compromise for me. You don't have to use this one. You can certainly use a different one. Okay, so that's my font created. So I'm going to go back into my button parent, and I'm going to say, all right, when we're setting a font, when we're drawing, I'm going to set the font first. So I'm going to grab my menu font there. I'm also going to set the text alignment here. And the text alignment I'm going to want is going to be center and middle. And some folks, the tutorials will say that you should set it back. I don't like setting it back because this is what I want it to be. If there was a way to permanently set this at the outset of a GameMaker game, I would probably do that. As it stands, I end up setting this a bunch of different places because I'm always going to assume that fonts should be handled from the center. The only time I ever use them handled otherwise is when I'm writing debugging code for myself. All right, so that's my draw event here. I didn't even set a sprite for this because I'm gonna set it for each of them. So that's my parent. Now I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna create an object. And this is going to be obj underscore button underscore play. So that's going to be my play button. I'm going to tell this one that I want it to have a button sprite. And I'm going to go ahead and tell it that I want it to have a parent. And the parent I want it to have is the button object. So the object button parent is going to be its parent. What that means is that it gets to know how to do the stuff that that an obj button parent knows how to do. So when I hit that, I automatically got draw and left pressed. So I'm going to go ahead and test this button out at first. So I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to hit inherit event. So what that's going to do is that's going to call whatever happens in the parent event, which in this case is nothing. And then once it's called the parent event, then I'm going to be able to put some stuff in here. And so the first thing I'm going to put in here is I'm going to tell it to go to a room. Right? When we hit the play button, we should go to the game room. So room game. Great. All right. That's what I need for there. Here, I'm going to need to put in some text. So I opened up my variable definitions. I'm going to hit edit. And the edit that I'm going to hit is I want this to say play on it. So now I'm going to hit play here. And what we're going to find out is that I forgot to put the button in the menu. So I need to go to the menu here, and I need to grab my play button object and drag it in here. Okay, so there's my object. Now when I hit run on this, I should see the word play in the center of a button. And if I click this button, I go into the game. And if I click somewhere else, clicking, 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 I don't go into the game. So that button is working. So I'm going to duplicate that button a couple of times. The first duplicate of it is going to be the help button. And the second duplicate of it is going to be the quit button. So then I'm going to drag help and quit out here since I already have this one open. And then we're going to need to go play with them. So we're going to open help and quit. So I'm going to open the variable definition for help. And I'm going to put help in here. And then I'm going to open the variable definition for the button quit. And I'm going to put quit in there. And then I'm going to change the left pressed event for the quit button. Instead of going to the room, what we're going to do is we're going to exit the game. So that's it. That's the quit button working. Let's double check that. Okay, the quit button works. Right now, the help button is causing me to start playing the game, so I need to adjust that one. There are a bunch of different ways to there are a bunch of different ways to do this. I'm going to use a Boolean. So a Boolean is a variable that can be either true or false. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to add a Boolean. And I'm going to call this display help text. That's going to be what my Boolean's called. And it's going to be false to start with. So that's my variable. And now in here, we're going to say if the display help text is false, we need to assign a variable, and we're going to assign display help text is true. And then we're going to say if it's not false, then it must be true. So then we'll copy this. Pro tip, if you click on where you want an event that you want to, if you click on one of these little boxes, when you hit paste, Control V, it'll appear right below it. And then you can just drag it in. And I want to set this to false. So if we're already displaying, or if we're not displaying the text, we should display the text. Otherwise, we shouldn't display the text. So this is just making a toggle switch. So it's either on or off. And then, in order to actually get this to draw something, I'm going to inherit the draw event. And now I'm going to go ahead and change this a little bit. So when I draw the let's see. I'm going to need an if statement. So if we're displaying help text, so if display help text is true, then we'll need to draw a value. And the value that I'm going to draw is going to be a little bit of explanation about my game. So it's going to say player 0, maybe let's call it left player. The left player uses, let's see, left player uses W and S. The right player uses the arrow keys. And then I'm going to make a new line. So I'm going to do a /n, which is kind of a carriage return. So that's going to hit enter, essentially. That's going to kick us on to the next line. And I'm going to say first to 3 wins. Okay, let's see if this is working. So I'm going to hit run on this. Now, if I... Uh-oh. I've got a little bit of a problem, but I can see that I'm getting text to display, and it's turning on and off. Okay, so what's the problem? The problem is that I'm displaying it at 0, 0, and it's centered. So it's drawing at the origin there. So I'm going to hit do relative. Oh, that's relative to the button. I don't want it to display where the button is. I want it to display at room, let's see, room width over 2. And let's say something like room height minus 100. Now when I hit play, I should see that text appear. Uh-oh. It's too wide. So what I need to do is I need to put in another return here. So let's go and do that. So you can always resize these things so you can see what the heck you're doing. And remember, holding shift lets us scroll to the side. We can always make this a little bigger as well. Okay, so what I want this to say is I want it to say the left player uses W and S period. Next line, the right player uses, and for consistency's sake, we should say the left player. And I'm just kind of fixing my capitalization there. So let's see if that works. Okay, cool. That seems like it works. All right, good deal. Okay, now let's switch things up a little bit here. So I'm gonna go and look at my parent object here. My parent object didn't have a sprite. I'm going to fix a couple of things here. So I'm going to make some aesthetic improvements. Because right now this is working. Like, if you want to quit this video now, totally fine. I want to make this look a little better, so I'm going to add a couple events. So I'm going to add a mouse enter event. I'm going to add a mouse leave event. And now when we do mouse enter, so what mouse enter is whenever the mouse is over the hitbox of the button, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the sprite. So I'm going to set the sprite to, I better make a new button sprite. So I'm going to duplicate my button, and I'm going to call this hover. And then I'm going to go into this button sprite, and I'm going to hit edit image. And then I'm going to pick myself a nice bright yellow. I'm going to take my paint bucket and I'm going to place that here. Actually, you know what? I'm really a huge fan of fuchsia. So I'm going to go with a nice neon pink. So I've got my neon pink button here. And then I'm going to go and in my parent here. So we're setting the sprite of the parent. And I'm going to set that sprite to this button hover sprite. And then I'm going to go into mouse leave and I'm going to set the sprite, and I'm going to set the sprite to that default button sprite. Just to make my brain work a little better here, I'm going to go ahead and set this the object parent sprite to button, so it makes sense to me that I'm changing it. So now I get this behavior where whichever button I'm over top of gets a nice pink outline, which I really like. Okay, cool. So that's that. Next thing. Those buttons don't feel very lively to me, so we're going to make a little bit of a mouse clicked event. And full disclosure, I stole this from a YouTube video. I like it. It's also basically the only way to make this work, I think. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. So I'm going to go with left pressed. Oh, I already have left pressed. So in our left pressed event, we're going to assign a variable. And the variable that I'm going to assign is the y value. And we're going to set it to y start plus 4. So that's going to kick our button kind of down about 4 units, or 4 pixels. And that's about twice the outline, so that's going to just be a little bit, well, you'll see. All right, so now when I click a button, it kind of goes down, but now it's down for good. So I want it to go back. So the way to make it go back is with this thing called an alarm. So alarms are hella cool. So we're setting alarm 0. We're going to set this to a countdown of, I don't know, 3 seconds is usually good enough. And then I'm going to go in here and I'm going to add an event. And the event I'm going to add is alarm 0. So on alarm 0, we're going to assign a variable. So when I clicked it, we moved the y down 4. So here I'm going to set y. Oops. I'm going to set y. And I'm going to set it back to its starting position. So now when I hit run here, I get this nice aesthetic. The button pops down just a little bit. Notice you don't get to see it with quit, and you also don't get to see it with you don't get to see it with quit, and you don't get to see it with play. The reason you don't get to see it with either of those is because their action is taken immediately. So if I want to make it so that those actions take just a second longer, so I get to see that click down, click back up behavior, what I can do is I can go ahead and grab my, let's say, the play button. So right now the play button relies on when I click, we go to the room. So I'm just going to remove that event. I'm going to say, I want you to inherit this alarm. We're going to call our alarm, and then we're going to do go to the room. So then the room I want to go to is going to be the game room again. So now we should see a slightly different behavior. So we should see now we click play, and it was a little bit fast. But it does actually pop back up. So okay. Now, if we want that same behavior for quit, we can do that exact same thing. So we can go into our quit, and we can say, all right, I don't want you to call, I want calling left pressed to call my parent event. I want to inherit my alarm 0. And the thing I want to do here is I want to exit the game. So now we should get our same behavior with our quit button. It does pop back up right before it exits. Okay. I think that's about what I wanted here. Oh, I have one more thing that I wanted to fix. This is just an aesthetic improvement to my game. You might, let's see, we need to lose. Okay, so player 0 wins. I want to change that to left player wins. So in order to do that, I need to figure out where that is. And this is where things get kind of complicated because I've got a lot of stuff. So I'm looking in the game, and this is why having some organization helps. So OBJ game runs this stuff. So here's my player 0 wins. And when player 0 wins, I want to say left player wins. And here when we say player 1 wins, we want to say right player wins. Both of those destroy the ball after they're done. So another good improvement for me here would be to create yet another room. Let's go ahead and do that. It's only going to take us a second. So, all right. I'm going to create an endgame thought, essentially. So the endgame thought I'm going to have is I'm going to say, all right, we should kick to an endgame room. So I'm going to duplicate my room menu. My menu room. And I'm going to call this room endgame. I'm going to call this room game over. Okay, and then I'm going to set my little hierarchy here, and I want to make sure it goes menu, game, game over. Great, good. All right, and then I'm going to go into my game over event, and I'm going to delete these guys. I've got my play button still. That's what this guy is. So I'm going to go ahead and in my menu objects, I'm just going to make a copy of my play button that I'm going to call play again. Now, this is really kind of a dirty trick because this is actually just exactly the play button again. The only thing I'm going to do with it is I'm just going to center it in the middle of the screen. How big is this room? How big is this room? I'm looking at room game over, which is 640 by 320. And this guy should be at 320. I was just one square too far over. All right, so that's centered now. And the only thing I want to do with this is I want to go in here and I want to change the variable to, say, play again, question mark. And now we should run this, and let's see what happens. Okay, so we play. Okay, I got right player wins. Nothing happened with my room because I never told anything. I never told it to do anything. So I'm going to go into my game object. So that's in this guy. And we're going to say, all right, in the case that we've moved on, right? Right. In the case that either player wins, right? What I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to do a go to room. So we're going to do a go to room here, and the room we want to go to is going to be our game over room. And then I just want to copy that. Oops. Reset my zoom like a dum-dum. Control C that and Control V that here. So now in the case that either player wins, we'll go to the game over room. Now let's see how this works. Okay, so we're going to play. Oops. Okay, so we got now a play button. Ooh, it doesn't say play again. It just says play. It does actually work. It resets everything, which is nice. But it just says play. Why does it just say play on it? So let's go look at our play again button. That button text is supposed to say play again. And the button's not broken. The button works. Why is it not a play again button? It's acting like it's a play button. So let me go into the game over room and look at this thing. So what is this thing? So if I'm clicking on this thing, this is a play button. Oh, it's the wrong damn button. So this button is the one that I originally moved in there. I want a play again button. So we're going to grab our play again button. Oops, I don't need that. I need just to make sure it's centered. It's centered. Great. This is going to happen to you if you don't have the text on these silly things. So here we're going to play. Hopefully somebody's going to lose quick. Great. I got play again. It's a little bit missized, which kind of annoys me, so I may have to make that button a bit wider. We're going to hit play. Great. So some options for resizing. I could make this button a different size by using a different sprite. I'd have to make 2 new sprites for it. I'd have to make a larger button sprite and a larger button hover sprite. That's a little bit annoying. So instead of making 2 new buttons, I'm just going to say change the text because I'm lazy. So we could just go with again, or we could go with restart. Let's see if that fits on a button. An easy way, by the way, to double check instead of having to go through this over and over again is to hit this guy and then drag the room that you're trying to test to the top so you get it as the first room. Okay, that looks good. I get my restart behavior. Great. Awesome. Feel like I'm pretty well done with this. Thanks, guys, for watching. We've got our menu. We've got a game over screen as a bonus. We've got some button clickiness and some hovering. That feels pretty good. This is pretty well a complete game. So once you're at this point, you can feel like you've got a game that's working. This game is pretty simple. I know that most of you are out to make a much more complicated game than this, but this is how we start. You make something small, and then you make it bigger. Thanks for watching. Catch you on the next one.